Everyone, my name is Matt Jarbo. This is $3 Theater. And yesterday, while I was in transit from Los Angeles back up to Washington, coming from YouTube's headquarters where I spent a couple days doing some training seminars, news broke about Cassian Andor getting his own live-action spin-off prequel series to Rogue One. And I spent the day thinking about that, right? Like, why? My first honest-to-God response to that was, not cool or bad, but why? Why would Cassian Andor, why would Diego Luna get his own show? I mean, yeah, the character was cool, but does it require his own show? I don't know. Let's take a look here at the press release from StarWars.com. They say here, Cassian Andor live-action series announced. Disney chairman and CEO Bob Iger announced today that Lucas is in development on a second Star Wars live-action series for Disney+, the company's new direct-to-consumer streaming service. So they finally announced what it is. It wasn't Disney Direct. It wasn't Disney Play. Now it's officially Disney+. Again, I don't really care. I want the content, goddammit. I want the content, what we're going to see on this one. Anyway, the series, which will go into production next year, follows the adventures of rebel spy Cassian Andor during the formative years of the rebellion and prior to the events of Rogue One, a Star Wars story. Diego Luna will reprise the role of Andor. Going back to the Star Wars universe is really special for me, he says. I have so many memories of the great work we did together and the relationships I made throughout the journey. We have a fantastic adventure ahead of us, and this new exciting format will give us a chance to explore the character more deeply. The rousing spy thriller will explore tales filled with espionage and daring missions to restore hope to a galaxy in the grip of a ruthless empire. The release date for the series has not been announced. Stay tuned for more updates. Okay, so what does this mean? Well, a couple things. One, and I'm just going to be blunt and say this, Disney is appealing to the Latino demographic. There's nothing wrong with that, but that's the thing. They realize that that's going to be a large draw. Diversity matters, representation matters, and I believe that. But I think that's what they're doing with this one because there's that. I think that's a big part. I don't think it's the entire thing, but I think when they were looking at what they've already established and how they want to tie it in, and how like the Loki, Scarlet Witch, Vision, Bucky, Falcon shows from Marvel have been kind of looked at, they probably thought to themselves, what kind of ancillary characters do we have that we can tie into this series? So they figured, okay, let's do another spy who does questionable things, which is actually probably the only. Well, that and another thing I'll get to here in a second. What I'm really excited about with this particular show, because I am, like, the more I think about it, the more excited I get, right? At first I was like, but then I started thinking more about it. For one, Diego Luna's character, the first time we meet him in Rogue One, he does a very heinous act. He kills his friend in order to not get captured by the Empire. It was a real dark move. It was a move that kind of solidified that he will, in fact, do what needs to be done in order to complete the mission. And I think they handled it in a way that was kind of off-putting at first, but maybe that was the entire point. But the more I watched Rogue One, the more I watched Cassian Andor's character, the more I was like, okay, I see why he did it. This is a guy who would kill or sacrifice whatever he needs to, I guess, and in the end, even himself, to make sure that the job is done. He is a true believer, but that always means that his adventures, his missions are always going to have these areas of gray. It's never going to be a white or black event. It's always going to be walking in the middle, and that's where he tends to find himself. But I think that when it comes to kind of like roguish or scoundrel-esque characters in Star Wars, walking that gray line is usually what makes them the most interesting. Someone who's always bad, someone who's always good is not something people ever seem to give much of a care about. But where this particular story stands is it stands in between, it goes, before the events of Rogue One, which tied directly into A New Hope. So it goes into that space between between the Revenge of the Sith and obviously, this whatever the hell it is, Star Wars A New Hope, episode 4, right? It's in the middle of that. Or, well, towards the end of that, meaning that the Empire has had its reign. They have control. The rebellion is fighting back. They're building their forces, but it's going to be more about probably the scrappier aspects of it, the dirtier aspects of it. What did Cassian Andor have to do in order to get himself to where he was in Rogue One? What other adventures has he undergone? Now, here's what I'm most excited about, because this is, honestly, it didn't dawn on me until just before recording this video. What I'm most excited about is the return of K2SO, right? This is the return of Alan Tudyk in the robot. You know he's going to play the droid. You know the droid's going to be in there because that bond was so great in Rogue One. Alan Tudyk nailed it. And as far as I know, he's not really doing anything right now. And this is clearly before his death. And we're probably going to get the story of how the two of them met. Very similar to how R2-D2 and C-3PO met in Phantom Menace. Very similar to how Chewbacca and Solo met in Solo. They like to tell these stories of these duos, these pairs that come together to undergo these massive journeys within the Star Wars franchise. Remember, one of the biggest reoccurring themes in Star Wars is the power of two, right? It's always the power of two. Duality. It's always going to be there in the series in one way or the other, right? It's always the duos. And this is just another one. This is just Cassian and K2SO. And I'm hoping Alan Tudyk comes back to reprise his role. I don't know if they're going to do like the same kind of CG that they put into Rogue One, but if they bring back to the kind of the grittier 70s take on it, where they design these sets, they build these sets, they tell these stories that are kind of looking like they're coming from the 70s and the 80s, and they use a lot of, like real practical effects. I think that's going to solidify the series. One of the key things that Rogue One had above the prequels was that it was, and even Force Awakens essentially, is that it was designed to go back and be as practical as possible. And I think they did a great job with that. And I'm hoping they continue that. So what this whole thing says to me is that Disney's really looking to push this, these kind of single stories, right? These types of stories that tie into the greater narrative with smaller characters. And I think The Mandalorian takes place like well before the events of Cassian Andor, right? Keep in mind that The Mandalorian is 8 years post Return of the Jedi, and this is going to be years before Rogue One. So there is going to, I doubt there's going to be a crossover, but it's entirely possible characters established in The Mandalorian will then head over to whatever the Cassian Andor show is. And I think the more that we grow with the character, because I'm not saying Diego Luna is bad. I think he was quite good. But the more we grow with the character, the more we're going to be just heartbreaking when it ends. And it probably ends with where Rogue One begins. So you just know what's going to happen. You know that this guy's going to die, and it's going to be heartbreaking on the fans. But that's going to be one of the things that kind of keeps them going and keeps them coming back for more. I don't know. I'm excited to see this, now that I talk about it out loud and I've gotten some sleep after my travels. So what do you guys think about this? Are you for it? Are you against it? Let me know in the comments. My name is, of course, Matt Jarbo. This has been $3 Theater. If you've made it this far, type in Cassian in the chat so I know, and we'll talk again soon. Have yourself a great day, guys, and peace out.